When were you born?
1909, October 16th.
And where? In Seattle?
Yeah, Queen Anne Hill.
Okay. And did you have brothers and sisters?
One sister. She just died recently. And the guy that she adopted didn't bother to call me, and because she was going to leave me some money and he wanted it, and one thing and another. It was a sad situation. So my sister died in September, and I didn't hear about it until 2 or 3 months later. She was 86, and someday I'm going to punch this guy in the mouth.
Well,
if I get around to it.
after you build the next boat.
After I build the next boat, behave myself.
Going back to boat building, you learned the craftsmanship from your father, and then you built several boats in the 30s. You had a particularly popular boat, or successful boat, called the Fireball.
Yeah.
I've heard about. What can you tell me about the Fireball?
What about it?
When did you build it, and how long did you race it?
Oh, I don't remember what year it was. Unfortunately, you're asking a guy that's losing memory about years and what I did, because I think that outline of this book, that'll, if you use that, you could prompt me from that, because it has dates there.
Sure.
And
Was the Fireball a 3-point prop rider?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I never built anything but hydros. After I built that one sled, I guess I better call it, I built hydros after that. I specialized in that.
what type of schooling or education did you have? Did you go to an engineering school to learn?
No, I went to Longfellow Grammar School, and I spent 2 years at Broadway High School, and that was it.
Yeah.
And when I was at Broadway, I taught boat building on the side because they couldn't afford a teacher.
So you were a student and a teacher at the same time?
Yeah, I was teaching boat building and going to school for a couple of years. Where were we?
Well, we were talking about some of the early boats, and then in about 1938, I guess, you met Stan Sayers for the first time? Was he a...
No, it was later than that.
Was?
I had a 225 hydro that I used to run all over Lake Washington. I'd get up in the morning, and that would be my fun for the day, running this hydro. I had a mildly hopped up V8 in it, and it would run maybe 100 miles an hour, I don't know, 90 to 95 to 100. And I was out running on the lake one day, and I saw another three-pointer, but it wasn't going very fast. In fact, it was limping all over, planing at quite an angle. One sponson wasn't doing its job, I could tell. So I caught up with this boat and passed him, and he waved at me. And then I went back, went around him again a couple of times, and he pointed at a dock nearby for me to go there. So I did. And it was a nice dock, and it was in Laurelhurst, and it was Stan Sayers. And he had just purchased this three-pointer from a man that ran, had trucks and so on in Denver someplace, Denver, Colorado. And it was called, this boat was called that he had Slo-Mo-Shun I or II. I can't remember which it was. It's probably Slo-Mo I, probably. And he said, I have a problem with it. This boat was, the sponson was damaged on shipping out here. And I took it to Anchor Jensen, and he said, oh yeah, we can fix that. So he put a beautiful new sponson on it, but it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It just, that sponson doesn't lift. The other one lifts good, but the one he repaired doesn't lift at all. And he's repaired it maybe half a dozen times and changed it, and still it doesn't run.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that you well saw it today. So he said, would you go out to Jensen's and tell them how to fix it? So I said, I'd be happy to, because here's a guy that's got a hydro and he's interested.
Yeah.
So I went out to Jensen's, and old man Jensen saw me come in, and they said, get your butt out of here. I don't know you. And Anchor helped him talk about it.
Uh-huh.
So I told him to call Sayers, and he'll tell them why I'm there.
Okay.
So they called him. And, yeah, I guess we have to listen to you. They're nasty. Two of the nastiest people I ever met in my life. So by this time, this is a couple days later, so the Slo-Mo IV was in their shop. Slo-Mo I was in their shop. And it was upside down. So I put a straight edge on the sponson like I did on
Mm-hmm.
for you that day.
There, yeah.
And there was no angle of attack on that sponson. Beautifully repaired. They did nice work. There's no doubt about it. They're expert craftsmen. They built sailboats.
Right.
And they built beautiful sailboats. But they had never built a hydro and never knew anything about it, so I didn't expect them to know anything about really. I just expect them to be more gentlemanly when they talk to a stranger,
Mm-hmm.
because I was ready to punch both of them, especially the old man. Oh, he was nasty. He was a wino, and he was all over the place, all talking how tough he was and so on. So I told him to take the piece of plywood off the bottom. In the meantime, they had put stainless steel on the bottom too, because they figured that the reason why the sponson didn't work was because it wasn't slick enough.
Okay.
They didn't know about angle of attack.
Yeah.
So I told them to take the metal off and the plywood, and they did. And I put little shims in
Mm-hmm.
the after end of them, and lesser high shims forward until I had a roughly 3-degree angle of attack, and I told them to put the plywood back on.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, and I said, now I'll put it in the water and see if it runs. Oh, the old man says, oh, the great man puts a couple of shims in and now it's going to run. So Sayers came around later on and we put it in the water, and it did run. It
Yes.
did, maybe 74 miles an hour. It would only run about 30 when they got through it the first time. And so it was almost competitive
Mm-hmm.
boat. So I got to know Sayers, and I said, as long as you're interested in the hydroplanes, I said, my interest is in unlimited hydroplanes, because I've never built an unlimited and I want to. And I need somebody that has some money to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you look like you have some money.
You sure did.
So he said, well, I'll think about it. So I guess he thought about it, because I didn't see him very often. And finally he called, he said, I have a deal for you.
All right.
I should have known better. You build me a 7-liter.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next size under unlimited.
Right.
For your cost, and if it's faster than the 7-liter record, and if you can win a race with it, I'll believe that you can build an unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
So I did this. I built Slo-Mo 3. And you've seen it.
Right.
It's in the shop.
And you built that right at cost?
Hmm?
You built that at cost?
Yeah, but I can't remember what the cost was, but I built it truthfully at cost because I was interested in making him happy about the Unlimited,
Yeah.
you know. So I took it out and I ran it and it set a new, capable of setting a new record. It didn't set it, it just went faster than the record. Then I raced it one race in Seattle and I won that race with no problem. And then for publicity, I raced a a flying boat.
Okay.
It was a small airplane with skis on it, pontoons. And I beat it, mainly because he couldn't hold it in the turns.
Yeah.
He slid out too far. So it made Sayers think that was really something. But he said I still can't pop for the Unlimited because I'm not too sure. So I dreamed up a deal later on. I said, I'll make a deal with you. You pop for material to build an Unlimited. I'll design it. And if it doesn't set a record, we'll go just like the 7-liter. If it doesn't set a record, and if it doesn't go fast and isn't successful,
Right.
I'll pay you back at $100 a month. That's all I can afford. I make $500 a month as a foreman of Boeing, and I'll pay $100 a month till you're paid back. So on that premise, we built Slo-Mo 4.
Do you remember how much it cost when you built it?
$19,000.
That's all?
At Jensen's.
Right.
And I was there. The darnest thing, I told Anchor exactly the dimensions of the battens, the keel, every part of the boat. And I said, when you get those cut out, call me and we'll start putting it together. And because I want to watch you put it together. I said, lightweight is the answer. Power-weight ratio is the answer to speed. Nothing else in the world. So he called me up a few days later, and I went in there and had a pile of beautiful white oak on the floor, beautifully machined,
Right.
beautifully too heavy, like 100 times too heavy. Instead of a 7/8 thick keel, it was 4 inches thick of white oak.
You're kidding.
The boat would have weighed roughly, just the bare hull would have weighed 20,000 pounds or more, because there was that many thousand pounds of white oak. So I think I used the keel and cut it up and made all the battens and half the frames out of just the keel that he cut out. Then and everything was a fight.
Yeah.
A real fight. I mean, ready to call, name calling and the whole bit to get it done right. And finally got the boat built. But it was fairly light, 4,600 pounds.
That is light.
That was light for an Unlimited, but it was only 28 feet long and only 11 feet wide. In the meantime, I've made them longer and wider.
Now, had you drawn the drawings for the Slo-Mo-Shun IV in advance for yourself?
Years and years in advance.
When did you actually draw the boat? I mean,
Way back in the 30s sometime.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I was Unlimited conscious. In fact, Sayers, I found out, he said, let's go to Detroit and see the Gold Cup race there. And you'll see what you're up against. So we went to Detroit, and he put me up in a crappy hotel, and it was too hot. And I'll never forget that. But we did see the the Guy Lombardo one, 1946, yeah. I gave Ken a tape on that.
Yeah. You were at that race?
Hmm?
You were at that race in 46?
Pardon me?
You went to the race in 46 and saw the whole race?
Yeah. I saw it. And Guy Lombardo dumped over and came back in the pits from the hospital with his left arm in a sling. I said, Guy, how come you didn't hurt your right arm? He said, well, how the hell can I lead the band if I can't have my right hand? He'd stand there and lead the band. But anyway, it's just a joke we had between us.
Sure.
We were friends, and he was a real nice guy. He a nice guy.
Good. So you drew the original drawings back in the late 30s, and then you didn't, for the Slo-Mo-Shun IV, you did the original drawings a long time before.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, way back. I improved on them. I had a drawing on the table just like that drawing is, night and day. And almost every day I'd make some improvement on it. And look at the drawing and think, who drew this piece of garbage, you know? And the next day I'd make the changes and it looked pretty good.
Okay.
And finally it looked like Slo-Mo. I couldn't stand, later on I couldn't stand to build a boat that came to a point because it didn't hold the air under it. So I radiused all the boats from then on. So that's how my boats were different than anybody else's boats.
How long did it take to build the Slo-Mo?
I couldn't tell you. It wasn't too long. I had a lot of problem with them. For instance, the rudder. I had learned to make a rudder a wedge type, perfectly wedge rudder. So I made a wooden rudder, and I gave it to Anchor, and I told him to take to the machine shop and have a steel rudder made exactly like this wooden rudder, which was a perfect wedge. Both sides were absolutely flat and straight to a wedge. So he came back a few days later with this rudder, and he had it radiused, just like the Detroit. He said, all the rudders in Detroit are radiused. I said, the back end of the boat will go completely ape. And he said, oh, no, I know more about this than you do. I built sailboats and rudders with sailboats and so on. But he's only talking about 18-mile-an-hour sailboat, you know. And so we put it on the boat. And I told Sarah, I said, I'm not going to drive it because the back end's going to flip around, and you'll think that I'm doing it with the steering wheel, but I want you to know it. So Sarah drove it and brought it in. He said, that was a piece of junk, you know, that makes the boat like a piece of junk. So I spent all night grinding on that rudder. Personally, I did all night long, and the next day I had it ground down straight. We put it back in the boat, and then I took the boat out, and it ran beautifully.
That was the first time you took the boat out?
Yeah. Another thing that Anchor and I argued about was the steering system. He wanted a cable system like sailboats, and the sledging. And the first day we took the boat out, the day Sarah's took it out to try the rudder, the sledges broke, and the boat went ape and almost dumped over. So then I put my type of steering on, solid rod and gearbox steering back on. So that took a few days too. It didn't happen overnight. everything took a few days to get done because I had to argue with these people, sailboat people who did beautiful work on sailboats, but they didn't know their butt from third base about hydroplanes. They didn't know anything about hydroplanes. They never built one. They never saw one before. So how do you expect them to know anything? I didn't expect them to know anything. But I expected them to listen because I had already proven I had all kinds of records and limited boats on my own, speed records, and they should have listened to, but they didn't. They wanted to argue about everything, which took longer, cost more money. It was a pain. Many times I went home, I said, I'm never coming back here again. I'm tired of looking and fighting you guys.
Now, were you still working at Boeing full-time?
Yeah,
For these guys at night?
yeah, I was. If I didn't, I wouldn't eat.
Yeah. So Sayers wasn't paying at that point. It was all
Oh, no,
volunteer.
oh, no. He never paid anything anytime to anyone that I know of.
Okay.
He got all the money from Greater Seattle to do this, and he led everyone to believe that he was paying for it out of his own pocket. It was Greater Seattle money.
Yeah.
That was proven in a court case that the government took him on, and I got a record of that, the whole record of that case, where the government was suing him for not paying income tax on the money that he got from Greater Seattle. And he all said he put everything in the boat. Well, he didn't.
Now, this was money that Greater Seattle gave him in 1950 after the mile trial, but before the Gold Cup, to go back to the Gold Cup?
Oh, yeah, he paid him, Greater Seattle paid him for everything.
Oh, for everything.
But he never paid my way any place.
Really?
And I had to build I wanted to get the boat back to Detroit to race the Gold Cup in 1950. That was one of the things I wanted to do. And Sarah said, well, I don't owe the people in Seattle, these Hicks, he called them, Hicks in Seattle, a damn thing. I don't owe them anything, and I'm not going to pay to have that boat shipped back. So I called Detroit Transit Company in Detroit. The woman answered, and I said, I want to talk to the boss. She said, I am the boss. And I could tell she was the boss, all right. And I made her a deal. I said, I'll paint a banner saying Detroit Transit Company is now hauling almost said Miss Tripoli, Slo-Mo-Shun IV to Detroit to the 1950 Gold Cup. And she said, you got a deal, son. So she sent a truck out and got the boat. Took it back there.
Detroit Transit took the Slo-Mo-4 back to the Gold Cup.
Yeah. And it wasn't exactly real great because they put it on a flatbed, and those flatbeds run pretty hard, but it stayed together. That's a good test for it, for strength.
Sure is. Well, before we talk about the Gold Cup, I want to ask a little bit about the mile trial. Your deal with Stan was that...
Oh, I had a deal with him. I would design the boat, but I would drive it and get credit for the mile trial. Yeah. This is something I wanted. I wanted to win the Gold Cup. I wanted to have the straightaway record in my name. I wanted a lot of things, not a lot of things, but a few things that I dreamed about all my life, because that was my dream. It wasn't his.
Sure.
You know. So the day came for the mile trial, July 26, 1951, I guess. Yeah, 1950. I don't remember. Anyway.
June 19th, 1950 is when the first run.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for me. That's perfect.
That's
from my memory now. You asked me 5 years ago, I had a good memory, but
Oh, you got a great
when
memory.
I went past 80 years old, my memory went to lunch half the time. So I got to the pits, and I noticed that Anchor Jensen's uncle had his runabout there, and that was the runabout that when we ran for the mile, he ran in front of us.
Yeah.
You saw that film I showed you?
Mm-hmm.
I was told about it in that film. And I saw Anchor Jensen's uncle there, and I said, Sarah's, I'm going over, drive the mow over. We're both in the cockpit. I'm going to drive it over and get the keys to that runabout of his, because he's a nut. He'll find a reason to run in front of us.
Was that Henry Jensen? Harry? Harvey?
Harvey or something like that. Harvey, yeah. He owned a company that built cold weather garments and lined them with some special sheep lining from Australia or someplace. I don't know where it was. He's a nut, because a few years before that, I was pulling skiers at high speeds with my 225, and he was pulling a skier one day in a race over on Lake Washington, in a ski race. And I had a good skier on behind me, and I saw Jensen up ahead and going with his skier, so I punched the 225 and went on by him. And as soon as my skier came abreast of his runabout, he moved his runabout over and knocked him off of it. It hurt him. That's the kind of a guy he was.
That's nasty.
So that's why I wanted the keys out of his runabout, because I didn't trust the guy. And he wouldn't give me the keys, and he told Sayers, he says, you know me, they were in business together. Sayers, in fact, was in business with him on this cold weather garment thing. They both had money in it. And he told Sayers, you know me, I wouldn't do that. And I said, I know you. You're dumb enough to run across in front of us. And that's a bad time. I worked hard to this point, and I don't want to lose out. He said, I promise I'll stay right here. I said, that's not good enough. Give me your keys. And I was getting pretty hostile by this time. I'm ready to punch him out. And Sayers says, come on, he won't. He said, I'll take a chance. I said, I'm in the boat too. I don't trust this guy. We argued, and finally somebody said, get your butts in the gear. We haven't got all day to judge this race. So we went. And the first run was south run from the north, and just as we passed the buoy, I saw 196, and I knew that by the time we got to the line, we'd be doing 200, and we were going along, and here the stupid runabout cut in front of us, left a wall of water 4 feet high. And we hit that wall of water and went up 70 feet, pulled the shaft out of the boat, broke my back, because I'm over here trying to steer like this. Sayers is sitting here, and I had to hold the wheel.
Now you were steering for him.
So
You were steering for him because he had trouble with his eyesight?
I didn't hear that.
You were steering from...
Yes, from the...
Because Sayers had trouble with his eyes, he couldn't see.
Yeah, he couldn't see. And that's it takes a young man to see the buoy a mile away or 2 miles away.
Right.
And I don't blame him for not seeing, because I could see now that I might have a problem. I don't happen to have, but I might have a problem. So he was older than I was, not much, just come to think it, he was only a few years older than I was, like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that. but he couldn't see well because I found that out. One day we were both in Slo-Mo-Shun IV, and I agreed to ride with him this time. I don't know why, but I agreed to ride with him. So we're going along, and here comes a runabout with a boy and a girl in it. And we're not slowing down, and we're not changing any. And we're going to meet right there, you know. And I grabbed the wheel and I turned it, and he just went ape. He said, "Don't you ever turn the wheel on me again." And just then, this runabout came up, and the girl had fainted. I don't blame her. You know, we're doing maybe 100 and some odd miles an hour, right close to him. And he didn't see it. And he come in the dock. He had the bow that the mow busted up. I repaired it a dozen times. He come in the dock too fast and hit it. His depth perception was off too. So I was afraid to ride with him anymore. That's why I did the steering. I didn't want to. I got enough trouble without having somebody
who can't see
steering a boat and I'm in it.
Yeah. Well, going back to the mile trial, how many days did you take to get the record? There were several days when the weather was bad.
Just 2 days is all we had.
Okay.
And I had to put a shaft in that was scored, and you know, the shaft was small enough as it was. I should have put an 1 3/4 shaft in it, and I thought 1.5 would be big enough, and it was scored. So actually, it was scored to a point where it was only 1 maybe 1/4 in diameter in one place, or 1 3/8 in diameter in one place. So, and then the only propeller I had was an old brass prop, and I still have it.
Do you?
Yeah. And it was a brass prop that it was bronze, it was Molium bronze. It was pretty good. And I was limited to turn brass or Molium bronze to maybe 3,200 or something, engine speed. So we took it through the mile, and I worked the throttle so that he wouldn't go too fast and break the shaft and propeller. And we only took it through at 160.323, deliberately kept the speed down because of the shaft. And otherwise the record would have been, it would have been 200 if we hadn't had Jensen.
Right. And
Jensen, as I found out later, had predicted that the Slo-Mo-Shun IV would never set a new record, ever. And his uncle was going to make sure that we didn't. And I'm sure of that. Nobody else agrees with me on that. Well, I haven't asked everybody. But.
Now, your original deal had been that you would get to drive the boat
yes.
mile trial?
Yes.
And then
for designing it and for engineering the building of it, standing there all day while they put pieces together. And they did a good job of building. They're real great workers, real great wood butchers, some of the best, because they built some beautiful sailboats in their days.
Okay.
I have no squawks there. It's just that they'd never built a hydroplane before, and they didn't understand the lightweight. In a sailboat, you don't care if it weighs a couple of tons, but on a hydroplane, you have to, it's power-weight ratio makes them go.
Right. Now, in the mile trial, when you hurt your back, did you know right away that your back was hurt badly, or did?
Oh yeah, it was broken.
Yeah.
And I crawled out on the deck, and a friend of mine, can't remember his name, Poison Ivy was the name of his boat. His name was Len Ivy. How about that? You know him?
Yeah.
Well, you heard? Oh.
No.
Well, Len was there with a runabout, and I motioned him to come over, and I rolled off a slow-mo onto his boat, and I told him to go catch that guy. I was going to kill him if I could.
Mm-hmm.
The guy in that runabout, and Jensen took off. And 2 or 3 years later, we made a movie called Mr. Slo-Mo-Shun,
Mm-hmm.
and I drove Slo-Mo 5 and Sarah drove Slo-Mo 4. And I guess you know that a right-hand turning propeller throws a left-hand wash.
Yes.
And Jensen was out there with his runabout with a photographer and taking pictures, free, because we're making this movie. And Hollywood has sent up many photographers and special airplanes to take movies, and Jensen was going to have some free movies taken for himself. And I saw him parked there, so I went by him around 190 for that wash to come down on his boat. And I made a turn, and I came back, and I went down the other side for another blast, then another side, and pretty soon I had the boat about half scuttled. And the Navy or the Coast Guard guys were out there doing this, and because they didn't like him anyway. He was always in trouble with his boat. So I got back at the old man.
Well, good. Who all was on the crew of the Slo-Mo-Shun IV at this point? Who was on the crew on the Slo-Mo-Shun IV at this point? There was you, and had Mike Welsh joined?
Mike Welsh.
And he came.
Jerry Barker, friend of mine. He was the only good crew member I had, Jerry. And a bunch of good guys.
Were they friends of yours from Boeing, or were they friends of Stan Sayers from...
No, none of them. They're all friends of mine. They're good men.
Okay. They
understood race boats. I can't remember all their names now. It's a shame. Oh, there was Elmer Linensmith.
Yeah.
Oh dear. And they were good friends of mine too, and I can't remember them.